Hi, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to make a healthy beef and chicken meal for our dogs. So Dexter, as you probably know, gets a home-cooked meal, and today we're going to make about 12 days of food. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with my fruits and vegetables. That way I don't contaminate the working surface. So today we're going to use an organic cucumber. So the first thing you want to do is you want to peel the cucumber, get all that stuff off. I should actually say that's the second thing I've done because I've already washed all my organic fruits and vegetables for you to make this video much quicker for you. So I'm just going to do a quick little peel, get that all finished. And then I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to chop the ends off here. And I'm just going to make some rough chops. And as you see to the right over here is Dexter's crock pot. So it's not your average crock pot, it's actually a large turkey roaster. That way I'm able to do more than a few days at a time because this food does add up and it gets some bulk going. So I'm just going to throw all this right into the slow cooker, this nice big turkey roaster. And there's my cucumber. Next I'm going to take some butternut squash and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take a quick little peel. Get all that stuff off. Alright, and again, we want to use organic vegetables and fruits. That way they are chemical and preservative free because we don't need those chemicals in our bodies or our dog's bodies. And I'm just going to cut it lengthways. That way I can expose these seeds. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove those seeds with a spoon. And just kind of get most of those off there. Doesn't have to be perfect. They aren't harmful because they're so small. But just another little scoop on the other side. That way I'm just getting pretty much this nice, healthy, fresh meat of this squash here. And then again, just a nice little rough cut. I don't know, I think I chopped my ends off there. So I'm going to kind of get rid of the nasty little ends. And just chop it up and toss it in. Doesn't get much simpler than that. And next I'm going to go ahead and do a green pepper, and I'm just going to cut this core out a little bit here. I just cut it from the top. That's a healthy piece, so I'll pop that in and I just kind of pull it out. And there's still a little bit of seeds in there, so what I can do is I can just rinse it in the sink really quick. And I just wash it around a little bit. That helps empty it out. And then I'm just going to open it up, trim up some of that extra stuff. And just take that little bit of that seed off. You want to have them when you're cutting them to be about bite-sized pieces for your dog. That way when the crock is all done, it's just all ready to go and you don't have to worry about making sure it's small enough. So we're just going to do another little rough chop. Doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be an extreme chef here. Not that kind of cooking show. Now we're going to throw it back in there. There's our nice organic green pepper. And when you're home cooking for your dog, what you want to do is get about 70% of meat because dogs are carnivores, so they do need a nice portion of that meat. And then I do my other 30% fruits and vegetables. You can use some healthy grains, but you want to keep that to a minimum. And then some dogs don't tolerate grains very well, so today we're going grain-free. And that minimum, usually I do maybe about 5% grains, you know, things like barley or oats, some wild rice. Today, strictly grain-free. So here's my radishes. Again, nice, fresh, organic radishes. And currently I am making a garden in our backyard for Dexter with some fruits, vegetables, and herbs. And I did plant some organic radish seeds, but right now they're still just little sprouts, so I don't have any. So after I cut the ends off, again, I'm just going to probably just cut this lengthwise. Just some nice little chunks. Watch your fingers there. A good knife is always very handy. I've learned that the hard way. I always try to make things last longer than they necessarily should. So it doesn't have to be perfect, just nice bite sizes. Some dogs will eat these radishes fresh, but Dexter found out they're just a little too spicy for him. But once they're cooked up and cracked, then they lose that spice, and then they also take in all the other flavors of the crock pot, so you're able to kind of sneak them in for your dog. And just a nice little rough chop. And I'm sure you guessed what the next step is. We're just going to toss it right into our crock pot. For this one, a nice big turkey roaster. I've yet to fill up this turkey roaster. It's never been too small yet. Next up, we have our nice organic kale. And we're going to just chop off those big ends. And I'm just, again, going to do a nice little rough cut. After my rough cut, get that end off. Toss it right into that slow cooker. Cut that big old end off there for you. When I'm looking for my fruits and vegetables for Dexter, basically what I end up doing is looking down the aisle, and I just look for different colors. I want nice, bright, fresh foods. The more colors, they tend to have different vitamins and nutrients, so that helps me know that I'm working on a nice balanced meal for him. And then next up, I'm going to put in some organic shiitake mushrooms. And I'm sure you've heard mushrooms are toxic for dogs. That most of the mushrooms are, but the shiitake mushrooms are actually safe. And they actually have some cancer fighting properties. So I'm just going to chop up a handful of them. Toss them in the slow cooker over here. And I just cut the stems off because they're pretty hard. And when you're sourcing your foods for your dog or yourself, one of the things that I do is I go to my local co-op. Well, for me, it's not quite so local. It's about an hour away, so I do have to make a trip out that way. But also some health food stores do carry some of these things. So that is from our health food store. So next I have an organic apple. Really quickly, I'm just going to peel it. You don't want to use the skins and seeds on these babies. Just like to get the meat of the fruits and vegetables for our dogs. Alright, so a nice little thing. And then for me, I have a nice apple corer. And I do like my gadgets. Some work really well. You just push that down. And there you go, the core's out. So I'm just going to take that random seed. And what do we got next? A nice rough chop for our apple. And our fruits and vegetables, you know, dogs do eat a raw diet as well. But if you are doing a raw diet, especially with fruits and vegetables, you really need to make sure that those are nice and small so that they can digest them well, because digesting fruits and vegetables can be a little rough if they're big chunks. So you want to puree them. So next we have some nice organic blackberries. And I'm just going to toss those in as well. Again, I wash these ahead of time. Alright, so that is going to be my 30% fruits and vegetables. And then the next I have is our organic meat. So today what we're going to be using is we're going to be using some nice organic lean beef tips. So I'm just going to take my nice sharp knife and just chop these into more bite-sized pieces. And his meat portion again is about 70% total meat. And once that's there, throw it right on top of our fruits and vegetables. And I'm just going to do that for all the meat. Once my beef's cut up, the next thing that I'm doing for Dexter is we're going to have some organic chicken legs. So here it is. It comes nice and fresh. I'm going to go ahead and leave this bone and skin on while it's crocking to give it some nice nutrients and a little extra fat. I'm actually going to remove half of the skins from half of the leg so it's not too fatty, and I'm going to make sure that I scrape up any additional fat. Now once it's done crocking, I will need to remove these bones because dogs cannot eat cooked bones because they splinter and break, and that can hurt their digestion. If you're doing a raw diet, then they can eat the raw bones, but definitely not cooked bones. So I'm just going to take some of the skin off of half of them. And this is why I do my fruits and vegetables first, because it can get pretty slimy when you're working with the meat. My poor vegetarian friends who home cook for their dog. You can get things pre-done, you know, so you can't actually order meat that does already ground and the fat's off, and then all you have to do is open up the tube and toss it in there, and that's a lot easier for some of our people. I'm just going to remove some of that fat. And then once the fat's removed, it's going to go right on into the crock. After I put those chicken pieces in, then the next thing I want to do is I want to use a little organ meat. So when I'm using organ meat, I want to make sure that I cut off all this extra fat. So as you can see with this beef part here, there's a lot of extra fat. So I need to make sure that I just trim that fat. After trimming the fat, then I want to cut up these into bite-sized pieces. That way I can toss it right into that slow cooker there for Dexter. Trim that fat, remove it. When we're cooking for our dogs, we want to make sure that their meals are about 70% meat and the other 30% fruits and vegetables. We also want to make sure that we're incorporating some organ meats into that diet. That way it has some more nutrients and more values for them. So I use about maybe 20%, 25% of that meat portion to be organs. Today we're using beef heart. After my meat's in there, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some organic eggs. I toss them right on top of everything else, because once I'm done crocking for the day, those eggs are actually going to turn into nice hard-boiled eggs, so that's all finished for me. The last thing is the water. I do use distilled water. I don't want to use the tap water. We personally in Toledo, Ohio tend to have some issues with our water, but that way it's nice, clean, and fresh water for him. So the water, I just pour it on top. I just want to make sure that my meat and my vegetables are covered with water. That way when I cook it up that it doesn't burn. And once it's covered, the last step is just to put that lid on top and let it cook for about 8 hours. We just want to make sure that all that meat's cooked thoroughly. After about 8 hours, then your dog's meal should be fully cooked, but we'll take a check just to make sure. It looks perfect. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we allow this to fully cool before we want to plate it up and crack those eggs and remove the skin and the bones from those chicken legs. After it's fully cooled, we want to get those chicken legs out first. And if you remember, we have some with skin and some without skin. We're going to want to remove the skin and the bones and discard them. We just want to keep the meat portion for our dog's meal. So we're going to find all those. And it's pretty simple. You can use a knife or your fingers just to kind of take that, and you'll see how quickly that fell apart because it's nice and moist. We slow cooked it. And when you slow cook food, you leave all that moisture in, which is a good tip for you when you're trying to make your own chicken. So we want to remove all those bones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the good meat and I'm actually going to put it in a bowl. So I'm going to prepare Dexter's meal in this big bowl first. So I'm going to remove all the meat from the bones and put it in there. Once I have all my meat inside this bowl, the next thing I want to do is I want to round up all those eggs. I put 12 eggs in here, so I want to get them out, and I'm going to want to remove those shells. I just want to do a quick crack and discard the shells. Sometimes they peel nice and easily, sometimes they give you a little trouble. And they will be a little different color than you might be used to because they've been sitting in that crock with all that other food. After I've cracked an egg, I'm going to take the egg and I'm just going to take big chunks just like we did before. And I'm going to toss that right into that bowl with that chicken. And I'm going to do that to all 12 eggs. The next thing I have after my eggs and my chicken are in the bowl is I have the rest of everything. I have the beef in there, and I have my fruits and vegetables in there. And since I put a lot of water in there, I have a lot of water that's sitting around. We can use some of that water, but I don't want to use all of it. So what I do is I just take a nice little strainer and a nice big spoon, and I just scoop it in there and let some of it strain down. You see, it doesn't have to be perfect because moisture and water is good. And then I'm going to add that to that bowl as well. So I'm going to do that for the entire crock until everything's removed and all that food is in this bowl. Once you have all your dog's food in the bowl, you want to give it a nice stir. That way you incorporate all the food so that each bite is evenly distributed. Once that's finished, I want to dish out Dexter's meals into individual containers. That way I can freeze what we don't need that first day or two. So for Dexter, I actually put in 2 days of food in one of our glass bowls. He gets about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of food a day, depending on what kind of activities and exercise he's been getting that week. We just want to make sure we keep an eye on Dexter's weight. That way he maintains his ideal weight. So I'm going to go ahead and get the measuring cup, and since this is going to be 2 days, I'm going to go ahead and put about 3 cups of food into each container. That way each container will be 2 days of food. So I just take my 1 cup measuring cup here, and I just fill the food. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I dump it in there. Again, there's cup 1. And there's 2, a little overflowing, because again, he gets about 1.5 cups to 2 cups a day. So we can give him, he's getting about 1.5 cups, maybe a little bit more right now, because he's trying to get rid of some winter weight. So right there's about 3 cups, maybe 3¼ cups of food, and that's going to be 2 days for Dexter. So I'm going to fill up every container to get rid of this food. Once you've filled all your containers up, then the last thing I want to do with this food is I'm going to go back to those great juices, and I'm going to ladle 2 ladles I should say, of that juice into each one of Dexter's meals here. And then I'm going to finish it up with the seal of approval. And as you see, I have 12 days of food here for Dexter. So I keep 2 days in the refrigerator, and then the rest of the days I put in Dexter's own private stand-up freezer. And he does have his own freezer, of course. When I go to feed Dexter, I do feed him 3 times a day, and in his breakfast meal, I need to make sure that I finish his meal by adding some minerals. These have trace minerals and phosphates and calcium that they do need to have, and then a little bit of vitamin D. So it's just usually about 3 drops of this vitamin D. With these vitamins and supplements, that'll make sure that his meals are totally complete, and then the food here is balanced. And one last peek, just to show you one more time that he's going to be getting nice, fresh, real food that's not heavily processed. It's going to be packed full of vitamins and nutrients, much better than any processed food you're going to find. And he obviously loves it. Hopefully you can tell by this video that it's really not that complicated to cook your dog a balanced and healthy meal. With the help of a big, huge slow cooker, you can easily cook 3-4 weeks of food into this crock pot, of course depending on how big your dog is. But with Dexter's meal for 14 days, this slow cooker was probably only about 1/4 full, so we still had plenty of room to go. So I could have easily made more than 14 days of food if I had wanted to. So enjoy your dog and enjoy your healthy meals together.